Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com. Today I'm going to be taking your questions on modified suspensions, oil leaks, lying service advisors, and more. This is episode 76 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. So like every Monday, this is the show where I take your questions that you send in to me, to Charles at HumbleMechanic.com, and put question for Charles in the subject. So if there's ever been a burning automotive question, send it in and I'll answer it. So let's get into your questions. First one comes from Danny. My question is about your thoughts on lowering cars and the effect, if any, on CV joints. I currently have an H&R Sport Cup kit, 1.5 inch drop, sitting in the garage. Before installing, I'm trying to think of any issues that I may have or what parts may prematurely wear. I've read horror stories of cars being dropped super low, but not sure what effect it has on a mild drop. So, cool question, Danny. Anytime you change the suspension ride height, you're gonna change the geometry of everything suspension. So the CV joints, tie rod angles, ball joints, everything changes. And that does tend to put a little bit more wear on all the suspension, both front and rear. Now, we're only dropping this car 1.5 inches, so there's really not a whole lot that's gonna be impacted negatively. Of course, your ride quality will change, but that may actually be an improvement depending on what you're going for. You really don't start to see negative consequences from lowering cars until you drop them really low. At a 1.5 inch drop, I'm not too worried about the extra wear on the suspension, but there could be some. Now, if we're dropping this car 4 or 5 inches or running on coilovers and slamming it on the ground, yeah, then we're gonna have some big time issues, not only with suspension geometry, but as well as tire fitment. So at 1.5 inches, will it have an impact? Yes. Will it be a big deal? Probably not. Would I do it? Heck yeah, I'd do it. 1.5 inches not that much. And if H&R calls for 1.5 inches, you could probably plan on it dropping a little more. Also be aware that you're now driving a lowered vehicle, so you need to be more conscious of things in the road, parking the vehicle on curbs, and going over speed bumps. Cool question, Danny, and I hope you get that suspension kit put on and enjoy every minute of it. All right, next one comes from Nick. It says, hey Charles, I got 2 questions. I have a 3.2 EOS DSG, has 45,000 miles on it, and it hasn't had the DSG service yet. When is it due, and is it hurting it if I am past? Okay, so the DSG services are due at 45,000 miles. You're not too far past on that one, Nick. But the question is this hurting anything? Well, I don't know. I've never once seen an issue with a DSG transmission directly tied not to doing the maintenance that's recommended. Now, it is recommended maintenance, so we have to err on the side of doing it at the right mileage versus not. But again, I've never seen one fail in a way that I could pin that back to lack of maintenance. It's not like doing an oil change where clearly the issue was breakdown in engine oil and we could tie the problem right back to that. I've seen DSGs go 80,000 miles and not have a problem. I've seen DSGs at 100,000 miles that have never been serviced and not have a problem. If this were my car, would I risk it? No. $350 or whatever a DSG service is not pocket change, but it's a heck of a lot cheaper than like a $4,000 transmission. So again, I would err on the side of doing it rather than waiting. Nick also has a question about his 13 DSG GTI. He has a Stage 2 Plus APR tune, and he's trying to get every bit of power out of the engine with the stock turbo. And the only mod left for me to do is a new speed power pulley kit, but after reading about it, I'm weary. People are saying that the crank pulley has to be balanced with the engine, and the slightly smaller and lighter pulley will ruin the engine. I'm not worried about the slight underdrive of the alternator and everything, but how safe do I think it would be? And does this pulley actually have anything to do with engine balance? Thanks, Nick. So on this particular engine, I really don't feel like the crank pulley is going to affect negatively balance of the engine. This engine has balance shafts that are built to take care of the vibration and balance of the engine. Now, there's a lot of vehicles out there that do have a harmonic balancer bolted to the front, which this part would basically replace the same part that he's talking about with this pulley kit, but I'm pretty sure the 2-liter TSI is not one of them. Now, as far as my thoughts on the underdrive pulley, honestly, I don't know how much you're really gonna see from that. Yes, you're gonna be underdriving components, but in my mind, you don't wanna underdrive the alternator. I would definitely not wanna underdrive the air conditioner because we take what we may be getting a little bit more horsepower on one side, but then the other side is we may be reducing our charging voltage. And maintaining proper voltage is very critical on these vehicles. So honestly, man, I wouldn't do it. I would save the money and buy a KO4 upgraded turbo if I were you. But a very interesting question, Nick. If any of you guys have installed the new speed pulley kit on your 2-liter turbo GTI, post it up and let Nick know how you like it. All right, next one comes from another Nick. Hey Charles, I have a 2001 Passat V6 wagon. The last couple of years, my cam chain tensioner seals have had a slight leak, but nothing I was too worried about and not too excessive for a 15-year-old Volkswagen. A couple of drops in the garage every night. Last week I noticed a pretty significant oil puddle under the passenger side. I know the PCV is clogged, so I'm getting ready to replace it along with the cam caps and tensioner seals. Is there anything else I should be looking at to replace? It's hard to see where the large leak is coming from because of all the gunk that's built up on the bottom over the years. Do you know of any cheaper ways to get the breathing system up to par? Stuff from places like ECS are pretty expensive from what it seems to be pretty basic parts. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, dude, those V6 Passat crankcase parts are very expensive. Actually, most Volkswagen crankcase parts are pretty expensive. I have seen a lot of people rig up, heater hosing and whatever, and it's all right. It doesn't feel right. Obviously, it doesn't fit correctly, and you may be creating the potential for leaks. These are all form-fitted plastic hoses, so you really do want to replace it with the right things. As far as any other oil leaks that you want to fix, generally when I do these upper end on the V6 Passat reseals, it's valve cover gaskets, cam plugs, cam chain tensioner gaskets, the vent hose that runs between the two valve covers, and a suction jet pump. Depending on the severity of the leak, I may also do the cam seals behind the cam gears. This is a really common thing with that generation of Volkswagen in both the V6 and the 1.8 turbo Passats, and Jetta, and Golf, and Beetle. What you're gonna have to also do is when you replace these parts, you're gonna wanna do a really thorough job of cleaning the engine compartment so that you can make sure once you get these leaks that you know you have fixed, you can diagnose any further leaks. As far as the crank vent parts are concerned, I know they're really expensive, but you really do want to make sure you get the right parts on your vehicle. I've seen a lot of creative ways to repair these hoses, and almost all of them were awful. Engine covers didn't fit right. Most all of them have leaked as well, so save up the money, replace them with the right stuff is always my recommendation. And shop around other places than ECS. You can try shopdap.com. They're one of the sponsors of the show, so of course I recommend them. So I'll put a link to them in the show notes, and good luck fixing your oil leaks, man. It's a repair that I've done a ton of times, so they can go really good or kind of go sideways on you. So take your time, be careful, and again, clean it really well to make sure you don't have any leaks beyond those. Okay, next up comes from Kit. I have a 2008 Jetta with a 2.0T. This is going to be the TSI engine. 2008 is actually a split year for the FSI and the TSI, but I've talked to Kit before, so I know this one's a TSI. I'm getting multiple misfire codes. I've done a decarb on the intake valves and just replaced the intake manifold. While this has helped some issues, I still have multiple misfires happening, mainly under heavier load, such as giving gas while climbing a hill or getting on the gas hard on the interstate. Any ideas? Thanks. A lot of guys are replacing the coil packs with the Audi ones. I think they're like the R8 coil packs. I heard a lot of people have really good results with that. You also want to make sure that you're running the proper spark plugs as well. Volkswagens really get upset about non-OE spark plugs. Do a quick sweep, make sure you don't have any loose intake boots or hoses or anything anywhere. That's a pretty basic engine as far as that goes. There's not too much to be left loose. And of course, make sure that we're running top tier good quality fuel. And hopefully when you did the decarb, you pulled the injectors out and cleaned the tips of the injectors as well, because that can stifle engine performance. But my guess is on this one, man, you probably got an issue with the coil packs. So I would start there. They're not terribly expensive, and I've seen that cure a lot of this similar type of issue. And like I mentioned, if I'm doing the coil packs, I would just go ahead and put spark plugs in it as well. Oh, and if you have VADCOM, you can actually monitor these misfires. Grab your laptop and have someone ride with you so they can watch the laptop and watch the VADCOM value blocks 14, 15, and 16 and see what cylinders you're misfiring on. Maybe it's only one and we can look to that cylinder, or maybe it's multiple, and again, that's when we'd be looking at coils and plugs as a starting point. All right, we got time for one more. This one comes from Mike. How do I contend with pretentious coworkers and customers? Mike worked at a dealership a long time ago and quit altogether due to bad service advisors lying to customers and bad training. Education was so-so, and the experience for me was deplorable. I don't trust dealerships at all. The more vehicles evolve, the more scams and unwanted sales pitches occur, or just ignorant parts replacers and service advisors are abound. Techs that own their own shops rape customers just because they think they should due to what they know. This industry has become a bad example for a career choice. I enjoy watching you. I still prefer to do it myself for the sole fact that I can. Thanks for your time. Keep the hateful comments coming. I know some people are going to fight me on this one. You know, Mike, I'm not going to beat you up too bad because I agree with you on probably 60% of what you said. Yes, there are a lot of terrible customers out there. Yes, there are a lot of terrible technicians, service advisors, service managers, dealerships, independent shops, all across the board. Yes, there's a lot of bad ones out there. Luckily for me, most of our customers are awesome. Most of my coworkers are pretty cool, so I don't deal with it too terribly much. I will say one thing about technicians that own their own shops raping customers, they're probably the least likely to. See, when you work in a dealership, you have buffers, right? So if a tech is taking advantage of customers, the manager sees it, or the advisor, is lying to customers, the manager see it, and they can put a stop to it. When a technician that owns their own shop does it, it immediately affects business. Any technician that runs their own shop can't afford to affect business like that. And most of them don't want to. I mean, honestly, Mike, most technicians that I know and that I come in contact with are really good, and man, we just want to go to work, we want to fix cars. Either we love fixing cars, or we love the brand, or we like working with customers, or all of it. I don't know, I don't know what drives everyone, but I'll tell you that there's a ton of us out there that are good, we work hard, and we just want to do right for everybody, because then we win too, right? That's how we get paid, that's how we earn customers, is fixing cars right. So I don't think most of us are out there just to get people. I also don't think that it's really a bad career choice at all, man. I've made a really good career for myself in this industry by working hard, being honest, being upfront, and not being afraid to talk to someone, not being afraid to tell someone, hey, your car's great, you don't need anything, or man, this car needs like $5 grand worth of work, it's worth maybe $2, so we need to decide, is this car worth fixing, or do we need to just get a different car? You also said something about as vehicles evolve, more scams can actually come about. I'm not sure I agree with that, because as vehicles evolve, the information that's available does too. So 20 years ago, you didn't have Eric the Car Guy on YouTube teaching you how to fix your own car. You didn't have somebody like me explaining some of these behind the scenes type dealership things. You didn't have the internet, millions of articles about 5 ways not to get scammed by a mechanic, or 10 things to make sure that your shop isn't doing, or 5 ways to save money on fixing your car. You didn't have all that, so now you do. So yes, cars are getting more complicated. Yes, there could be a potential for people to get taken advantage of more, but the excuse for that, I think, really drops, because there is so much information and so many people that are trying to stop these things like lying service advisors and lying, cheating technicians. They're trying to stop these things from happening. So the resources are there. It's kind of like the task of the customer to make sure that they're using the resources that are available. Now, that doesn't excuse the lying techs, the lying service advisors whatsoever in any way, and I'm the first one that'll jump down somebody's throat about it, but there's responsibility on all sides of these repairs or maintenance on vehicles. So, Mike, I hate that you worked at such a bad dealership. I do think sometimes I get clouded because I work at a really good dealership, and I read some of these stories from guys about how bad their service manager is, or how bad their service advisor is, or how bad the general manager is, and man, if you guys are in that position, just leave. There's good places out there to work that'll pay you what you're worth, that respect your time, that appreciate the knowledge that you have and the hard work that you do. And if you don't work for one of them, your toolbox has got wheels. Lock that box up and roll it somewhere that'll appreciate what you do. So fun question, Mike. There's a lot going on there, and I appreciate your honesty about all of it. I really do. And again, I agree with you on probably about 60% of that. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, post it in the comments section below. Hey, if you liked the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I really do appreciate that. You can also subscribe on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the blog, and obviously here on YouTube. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Oh, and don't forget, if you want a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com, and put question for Charles in the subject.